explain that. If you start a war, which is what Hamas did on the 7th of October, if you start a war, there are repercussions. There are repercussions to Russia for starting a war against Ukraine. Russia's lost a lot of troops. There are repercussions for Hamas for starting a war against Israel.
There are repercussions for an illegal occupation.
What's illegal occupation?
Of Israel against the Palestinians.
Where?
That is an illegal occupation. It is a determined illegal occupation.
Gaza.
Of course, Gaza and the West Bank.
Have you been to Gaza?
Yes, I have.
Is it occupied by the Israelis?
It's completely sealed off, as you know.
By who?
By the Israelis.
And who?
By the Israelis, by the US and her allies,
And
the
who else?
Israelis.
At this point, I realised that I was dealing with somebody who thought she knew the facts of the situation, but clearly didn't. And I regard this as really being one of the most dangerous types of journalists. After all, it's the job of journalists to inform their viewers, and it seemed that my friend here wanted to do anything but that.
It's completely sealed off, as you know.
By who?
By the Israelis.
And who?
By the Israelis, by the US and her allies,
And
the
who else?
Israelis. Isn't that enough?
No, tell me who else is allegedly sealing the Gaza.
I'm saying that Israel has completely encircled Gaza. Nothing goes in, nothing goes out,
Gaza
as
has.
you know.
Well, as you know, if you did, Gaza also has a border with Egypt. Why do you not mention Egypt? Egypt has a stronger fence to fence in the people of Gaza.
Okay, so you agree that Gaza has been fenced off?
Look, it's fenced off, although you might note that there are more workers until the 7th allowed into Israel to work and indeed to have medical treatments and others that were considered necessary to Hamas as a provider. There was plenty more people every day coming in to work in Israel from Gaza until the 7th than were going the other way into Egypt. So if I go back to this question, why do you say there's an illegal occupation of Gaza? Why do you say that?
Because there is.
Why?
Israel is an occupying state.
No,
It is internationally recognized.
I want to know. That's your view. Hang on, that's your view. I have to correct your view. I have to correct. No, it doesn't. The facts, our views might differ, but the facts are the facts, and I want to pick you up on something you just did.
I'm interviewing you.
I know, but I think you're uninformed. So let me just you are uninformed. First of all, you didn't say that Egypt is blockading Gaza. Secondly, you claim that Israel. It's very convenient for you to mention Israel because you've clearly got unanimous here. As you well know, in 2005, Israeli troops ripped Jewish families from their home in the Gaza.
Palestinians have been ripped from their homes.
Well, I mean, how far do you like to want to go? You can have one master of 2024.
Absolutely.
But let me finish.
The action of the International Court of Justice. Okay?
First of all,
we're talking about
you've got to
some of these actions there.
but we've got to inform your viewers of the facts, and you just misled them. In 2005, Israeli troops ripped every Jewish family from their homes in Gaza and handed over all of Gaza, which was completely clear of Jews.
That was after I think in 1948 and 1967, when Palestinians were ripped from their homes. That's
your
I know, so
specific interpretation of history, and yours is a very no. But we can agree to disagree, but don't misinform your viewers. Now you might go back. Well, I'm not misinforming your viewers. I'm informing them because you're not. The point that I'm trying to make distracted on from is that Israel took every Jew from Gaza in 2005, handed it over to the Palestinians, who then voted in Hamas, and to the great detriment of the Palestinian people, they have been ruled by Hamas for the last 18 years. If you want to look to the source of the conflict, look to that.
I really enjoyed that once we got going, as you can probably see. And at the very end of the interview, she had a rare moment of professionalism, and she leant over, as interviewers tend to, and said, "Thank you so much for coming on." And I said, "Oh no, I loved it." Now, you know, the French essayist Michel de Montaigne said, "Nothing is so firmly believed as that which we least know." I think my friend there was a great example of that. I, of course, have no idea what her ideology is, and I found it impossible to work it out. But I would just say that, as well as some people just being anti-Semites, some people really are amazingly ignorant about what happens here. And that's one of the reasons I say why I feel a kind of obligation to do what I can to see and tell the truth. But I want to move on because I really do stress this with great sincerity. I'm just a writer and a journalist. That's what I do. I use words. But in the past 14 months, it's been my huge honor to be in this country and be with people, particularly young men and women of this country, but people of all ages, who have shown what it means to use more than words and to put more than just their reputation on the line. It was my enormous honor in November of last year to go with the IDF and Moshe through the fence that the terrorists broke in through on the 7th, and to see for myself some of the scenes. This was another example of this last month. We were in Lebanon at a Hezbollah arms dump, and this was one of the tunnels we were filming in one day in Gaza. But what really has struck me in the last year is the individuals, the extraordinary individuals, these diamonds that I described earlier, which this country produces. I think of all of the soldiers and civilians who did incredible things on the 7th, when so much had broken down. The people of this country still found themselves and did what they needed to do. There were extraordinary soldiers who went straight to the south. And there are some, like my friend Nimrod, who I was in the south with again the other day, Nimrod Palmab. He's an extraordinary young man. He disobeyed an order to return to his base in Jerusalem when he realized what was happening in the south. He had only his handgun on. He drove south. He left farewell messages for his children on his phone. And he fought for the next few days. And he thought he wasn't going to survive the day. And thank God he did. He killed a lot of terrorists, saved a huge number of lives. And I met so many extraordinary people. There was a Muslim doctor, Tariq, who saved so many lives on the day, and here we were late last year. Hamas took him as a human shield, and the fact that he was a Muslim meant nothing to them. They shot him anyway, and thank God he survived. But I've seen the IDF up close in Gaza and in Judea and Samaria, and I wanted to tell you, as I get towards questions, but I wanted to tell you about one particular story. It was my huge honor last month. We went into Lebanon a number of times to see IDF operations there, and I have a friend from America who was a lone soldier for many years, and he is a sharpshooter. And in one of the Gaza wars more than 10 years ago, he lost his arm, one of his arms, to an RPG rocket fired by Hamas. But Izzy, as his name is, when he was in hospital recovering, said to all of the doctors and politicians who came by, he said, "I want to re-enlist." And everyone thought he was, is it a Meshuggah? Everyone thought he must be a Meshuggah. And no, he absolutely insisted, and eventually he got back into reserves. He actually finished his reserve duty and was in California on October the 7th, knew he had to go back, on his own dime, flew on the first flight he could, went to sit outside his army base, and they said, "You're not enlisted anymore." And so he just sat there for 10 days. And whenever rockets landed, he ran into the shelter with the people. And then eventually, after 10 days, the company said, "You're a kind of security risk if you sit out there much longer, so come in." And so he did, and he found the specially adapted rifle that he'd had made for him, which means he can unclip with the same arm that he's shooting with. And I cannot tell you how proud I was to go into Lebanon last month with Izzy, my one-armed sharpshooter friend. Isn't that amazing? It's amazing, and no other country produces people like this. But still, I often wonder why more people around the world don't see what I see. I still wonder that. And of course, sometimes it is about ignorance, and some people are just anti-Semites to the core. In this next clip from the Monk debates in Toronto, this past summer, I debate with one of the worst haters of Israel and his partner, Mehdi Hassan. Here we go. Find that.
Thank you very much. There's quite a lot to reply to there. Let me first say, Gideon, you started with a peroration about me not mentioning the Palestinian casualties. That's because I started by mentioning the war. And there is no law of war that says you're allowed to start a war and then complain when you lose it. And if Mehdi cares about the Palestinian casualties, as I'm sure he does, then tell your bosses in Qatar to tell their friends in Gaza to stop the war and give back the hostages. There are two ways to go into Gaza. One is with the IDF, which is what I did, and what most Western journalists have done. The other is to go in with Hamas. You could probably go in with Hamas. I can't. Please understand that those of us who recognize that anti-Zionism is anti-Semitism is because we see, after a mass slaughter of Jews, the world turning on one Jewish state. That is what we see and what we worry about, and what some people maybe seem not to care about, and all of the smears and all of the lies that they get to pump out. But I've got good news for you, ladies and gentlemen, to finish. I hope very much that you vote the right way tonight, obviously. And it matters for Canada and its image. But the Jewish state and the Jewish people have survived an awful lot worse than this. They have seen off every single one of their enemies, from Pharaoh to the Abyssinians, to the Babylonians, the Greeks, the Romans. They will see off Hamas, they will see off Mehdi, and they will outlive everybody in this room.
Wonderful evening in Toronto, and one of the things that really made it wonderful was that talking head there, Mehdi Hassan from Al Jazeera. He, among other things, chose to defame Arthur Balfour as an anti-Semite and a racist. He didn't realize he was dealing with somebody on my side who knew an awful lot more than him. And she pointed out how completely wrong he was on that fact, as on almost everything else that he tried to call a fact that evening. I'd like to invite my debating partner from Toronto to join me on the stage. She's a brilliant lawyer, she's a barrister, also from Britain. She's fighting alongside UK lawyers, particularly ladies and gentlemen, Natasha Halstead.
that Israel isn't going anywhere. It has seen off all its previous enemies. And looking back, so many months on from where we were then, all of your predictions have only come true. How is it now, being back in Israel, after the last 13 months?
Well, I should ask you first, because you just got in today.
It's always amazing to be here. The first time I came back after the 7th of October. I mean, you were all broken immediately after. I know you rushed to the scene, but for me, I didn't make it back until the 1st of December, which was the day that the ceasefire and hostage exchange fell apart. Hamas started firing again just after I landed. But I have to say, being broken until that day, within a day of being back in Israel, I put the pieces back together, and it was because of the incredible unity on display and the incredible force to be reckoned with.